Okay, I show it's about 3 minutes after 6, so we'll go ahead and get started. Uh, Welcome, everyone. Notice we have a good number of attendees tonight. I thank you all for joining us. And all right, so let's looking at our agenda, which I managed to attach to the second email that went out to everyone. We would like to start with our APD updates. So we usually begin with an area command update. Commander Sanchez, would you like to kick that off for us? Maybe not. Are you with us, Commander? All right, he may have had to step away momentarily. Pete, do you have anything you'd like?
Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay, we
All
can.
right.
Sir. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of computer issues here.
We know that story. We all get that.
Technology, right? It works great when it's working. Well, welcome everybody. Glad to see everybody here again. We don't have a whole lot of updates with the area command, just a few things. We're still working on some of our issues that we have been having regarding crime. I will tell you that we've had a pretty good decrease in property crimes. We are decreasing a little bit on some of our assaults and egg assaults. We're still higher than I would like it to be. I'm sure that's always going to be the case because we always want it to be at zero, but we are making some good progress. We do have a few things that are coming up. We started the business coalitions for the Northwest Area Command. In fact, on the 29th, I think we're having our first meeting with the West Bluff Business Coalition. And that's really to work with all the businesses and try to come up with a few more ideas and start communicating a little bit better to try to address some of those issues, which no doubt affects everybody here, especially when you're out going to the stores and things like that. But that's coming up on the 10th. We're also having the one for Cottonwood, and then we're going to be scheduling another one on Curso Montaño. So we're trying to get all those business. So we had to break it down by sectors. But all that is, it looks like it's going good. We're going to do the in-person meetings, which is great. And obviously some of the things when it comes to crime, if you have concerns regarding businesses, I always encourage contact that business, but contact us also, because then now we can bring some of those concerns to the businesses. We did, and Pete was out there with us. He kind of put it together where we met with Walmart down on course in Sequoia to go. Basically, we did a walk around on the store to try to see what improvements we can make for safety. And so, again, I encourage you to send me an email, and I'll put my email and my information in there again. But it is a good way for us to bring some of those concerns to the businesses also. Not that they're not responsive, because some businesses are pretty good at responding. But sometimes when you're in person and you bring these up, they may be able to clarify things. And not only that, they may be able to address it a little bit quicker if there's any of those concerns. But other than that, I think we're doing really good in the area command compared to some of the other areas regarding our crimes. I know there was an incident that had been going on for a while, and I don't know those who follow next door regarding a individual that apparently was exposing himself. There were several instances of where that happened, and we do try to look at that platform, that social media platform. We obviously don't monitor it, but I do try to pull it up now and then, and we saw that there was a few posts. We were able to do a background on it. We have identified that individual. The officers were able to find somebody that was actually a victim. And so they did issue a summons on him, but we went a little bit further than that on that case. Like I said, it did affect a lot of the Northwest Area Command because he was kind of all over the Northwest. And so, some of it did also have to do with mental health. So we were, along, obviously we didn't have to file the charges, but we did provide and offer some services to him. I know that there was Adult Protective Services made a house visit also, just, because they want to help him with his residence and things like that. Doesn't mean that the charges are still not going to be going, but they are. We just want to make sure that we cover all our bases, and it's not just us going out and charging people and giving them an opportunity to try to help them where they need those resources. So, but that's really where we are right now. If anybody has any questions.
Okay, I don't see any coming up in the chat. It looks like we may be having some issues with Zoom itself, but that seems to be the only thing. I don't see any questions coming up, so that's good news. Okay. All right, so thank you, Commander. We will let you slip back into the background.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and, oh yes, there is one of the, before we move on, one of the attendees has pointed out the question about the red tag vehicle on Paseo near golf course.
Yes.
I've driven by that a couple of times, and how long does it take for those vehicles to be removed once they've been tagged?
Once a vehicle's been tagged, it's usually 10 days. I did speak with the supervisor today, and I think for that one, I drive by there all the time too, and we can tow a vehicle without on this road like that when it's a hazard. That vehicle was out of the road. However, I did speak with the supervisor today, and they agreed that regardless if it's been the 10-day tag or not, we're going to go ahead and tow it in the next few days. And it's no excuse. But I think normally we have our PSAs that'll go out and do that because they log how long it's been and how long they've been tagged. Unfortunately, we don't have a PSA anymore. So, but we're going to get an officer to get it taken out of there. But it is normally 10 days unless it's considered a hazard.
Okay. And that one is blocking the bike path, but as long as it's out of the roadway, it's not considered an immediate or serious enough hazard.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's why I told them that we needed to move it regardless of how many days we're on there. Okay. Just because it did move into a little bit of into the bike lane.
Okay, fantastic. And then we have another request. Paradise between Unser and Golf Course is seeing increased problems with speeding. And if it's possible to get some enforcement out there, I think it would be appreciated.
Yes, definitely. We'll get some officers out there. I know we've had quite a bit of traffic enforcement throughout the area command, but we'll definitely put it on to have some officers do some enforcement.
Excellent, thank you. And Michelle, who posted that, if there are specific times or locations there, if you can let the commander know, then selective enforcement can be done to really have the most impact. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you to Reina for bringing up that vehicle. Jeff, did you have something you wanted to post or to say?
Yeah, I couldn't let it go by. I heard the commander say that we don't have a PSA anymore. So the Northwest isn't using PSA, or did the APD do away. No, I know they didn't do away because I see PSA trucks. So are we gonna
No,
get some help for you, Commander?
yes.
Or okay,
Thank you. And that's a good question. We know just our PSA left the department. However, we are looking at another class, and we're hoping. I know we're getting 2 PSAs here at the bid. As you know, the bid is in process right now. I believe the sergeants bid today, and the officers are going to bid, I believe, next week. So, but we did get 2 PSAs. We took our the officers that we were allotted for this bid, and one of the things that the department did, what I think is a great idea, because it gave us as the commanders the ability to just basically put those resources where we see the need for them. And so we were able to take those officers, and we broke down, basically we took I took the data for the calls for service, time of day, and then distributed. Obviously, one of the areas that we were really struggling was our swing shift hours, which are the busiest. And by now we had we were pretty short. So what I did was I added more, gave more officers to swing shift, took a little bit more from day shift, but I added the PSAs that are coming into day shift instead, because they also assist with taking some of those calls. And I'm hoping that the way that we set it up is that the idea was that between, in the afternoon, when you get those swing shift, those hours where you're getting a lot more of the calls, we're going to have more of the officers, with the idea that once they come in, they're able to start taking those calls right away, instead of having day shift. If day shift has a little bit more officers, then they're still having to stay over to catch up all those calls in swing shift, instead of the other way around. So we're hoping that's going to help us, and in turn eventually reduce the response times, because I do keep track of those. The communication center provides this to me, and I do look at those response times on a weekly basis.
Excellent. And what schedule the chief mentioned in a meeting the other day that there had been some flexibility added with just switching some officers to 5/8s, so 5 8-hour shifts a week. What's the normal shift structure for the officers now? Are they doing 8s? Or are they doing 10s, 12s?
They're doing both. Most of them are going to be, other than graveyard. Graveyard is going to stay on 410s, rightfully so. I work graveyards. The first time they did 5/8s in the department on graveyard, I did it. I worked them, and it was brutal. So I'm glad graveyard is going to stay on 410s. Day shift is going to have 2 teams. Most of them are going to be 5/8s. So we'll have 2 teams that are 5/8s, which are from 6:30 to 2:30. No, actually the 6:30 is actually the 10-hour shift to 4:30. The other shifts will be from 6:30 to 2:30. So, and swing shift will have the same. They'll have 1 410s, and then the other one will be at from 2 to midnight. But we will have, one of the things is that right now there's a couple of days, like I think on swing shift, and I know days, Wednesday and Thursday is just 1 team. So they're a solo squad. But now with these new shifts, there's always going to be 2 teams. Now, the numbers, once you have the 2 teams it's going to be a little bit more. However, we still have to account sometimes with training and days, officers taking time off and things like that. I think you're muted.
Yeah. Thank you. It's good that you're getting some more flexibility and the ability to move those assignments around to really maximize the use of officers.
And just so one another note, we did increase our PRT team. With that flexibility, I did take two of the officers. So because, I took two of the officers that we were allotted. So for calls for service, we're going to be two shorter than what they had given me. But I took two of those spots and they opened up they gave them to me to be able to open the PRT positions. And the reason for that is because they do reduce a lot of calls for service. If I can get those PRT teams to have more officers, it allows us the ability to do a little bit more proactive and in turn reducing some of those calls for service and workload on the rest of the officers.
Excellent. Can you remind us what PRT stands for?
PRT is a proactive response team, and they're not necessarily call takers, but they will take calls sometimes. There's a few days that they'll just go out and help the field officers take calls. But it's a lot of it is engagement. A lot of it is proactive activities. If we're having a concern in an area, we'll have them address those. They do a lot of work with the businesses. And in fact, the incident that I was talking to you about previously, when we have something like that, they're the ones who actually start looking into it and start addressing those concerns.
Which does actually bring up another question that was raised. I can go back here from Steve. Catalytic converter thefts from vehicles.
Yes. So we did get a complaint about those thefts. Even once, when it happens once, it's a problem. We didn't see in the Northwest because we had them pull the numbers. Even went back to about 19, I believe. And we didn't see a lot, even in the last 6 months. I didn't see a big number as there were in other area commands. I believe Foothills and Northeast maybe were the ones that were really getting hit hard with that. We'll be pulling numbers again just to see, but we haven't seen a huge increase in our area command. We've had a few, but not a huge increase. But we're still going to continue to monitor that.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like it's another one of those issues that we're seeing across the country that's also affecting us here. Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions that have come up so far. So thank you. And speaking of officers, PSAs, et cetera, we have Michelle English representing the recruiting division for us. So Officer English, would you like to give us an update on recruiting? If she's here with us.
Sorry, I just had to get unmuted. Oh, okay. So yeah, we had our test today for some applicants who had not passed the PT test for the CNM. Recruiting has been working with a couple of them a lot, and 4 of the 5 passed today, so that's good. So in the CNM class, there are 22 seated in that one. So there should be 22 in the CNM class, which starts in August. And we're down to 48 in the class at the academy that's going on now. And our goal is now 70 for the class of 125 that starts in November at the academy. Oh, and our PSA class, the commander was talking about the PSA classes, that is supposed to start in August, mid-August, I believe. And there are currently 16 seated. The goal is to have 30. So we put on a special testing actually it starts tomorrow, and we're testing another 13 tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be way closer to 30, but we'll see. And there's 16 seated, 3 in backgrounds, and then, like I said, 13 we're going to be testing tomorrow. So we'll see.
Excellent. And are you able to start attending the in-person job fairs again?
We are doing some, yes. Recruiters went to a congressman's job fair today, and they said it was very busy and had 5 people sign up and apply.
Good. Excellent. Good to hear.
Yes,
I
very
saw
happy.
there was some news coverage on that job fair, so I'm glad to know APD was there and that we're getting some folks. So good news all around, and hopefully things will continue apace.
Yes, we're very hopeful.
Good. Excellent. All right. Are there any questions for Officer English or for the commander? I think we've answered everything that's come up so far in the chat. All right. Well, thank you very much, Officer English, for joining us and giving us that update. All right. We will go ahead and move on in our agenda to our next item, which is the update on the use of force policies that were sent out as attachments for everyone. And for that, we have Acting Commander Richard Evans. Commander, if you'd like to go ahead and tell us a bit about what's going on with the use of force.
Sure thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear. Thank you.
All right, good deal. I'm not plagued with the issues that Commander Sanchez and Officer English had, right? All right. I'm just going to go through these pretty briefly. Otherwise, I'll take up your whole evening. It is a pretty detailed use of force report. So I'm going to start with SOP 252, the use of force general. So when I'm quiet, I'm just scrolling down to look for the changes that we've made, okay? Most of this is just cleaning it up and formatting for our purposes. Sometimes we'll have officers and we'll change it to sworn personnel because it's a better fit. Sometimes we change it from sworn personnel to departmental personnel, depending on whether it affects sworn and non-sworn. So there's changes like that that we'll make just to clean things up and for better formatting. And then we move a lot around. So if you go to 2524A3, you'll see sworn personnel shall not use force in a manner that violates federal or state law. That's always been policy. We just clean it up. We move it to a different area for ease. Then sometimes we'll break them down just to make it a cleaner format. Only use force to accomplish a lawful objective. Only use force that's necessary. It's objectively reasonable. It's the minimum amount necessary. And then continually assess whether they're using the minimum amount of force and whether it's necessary while they're using it. That's an indicator while we're using force that we have to constantly evaluate, which is no easy task, by the way. You have to constantly evaluate the force that you're using and make sure that it's appropriate and proportional to what's going on.
Yeah, it really seems like a lot of this is moving things around and clarifying more than really adding to the policy. Is that correct?
That's correct. 252, it looks like we're just cleaning it up and moving a lot around. A lot of our policy was doing that. And granted, we're still in the early stages of revising the policy. It's going out for feedback with the field. And of course, civilians can also give feedback onto our policy. We add things, so our de-escalation policy has has increased, and we actually developed a new policy for that, specifically for de-escalation, because it's important. And so you'll see mention of that in other policies talking about de-escalation. That was some of the things that the mid-cycle PMP that they were calling out, was that they didn't feel that there was enough de-escalation. Well, we actually have a policy for it now, so that's why there's not a lot of it in the earlier policies.
Thanks, Kelly. So Kelly has brought up, hopefully folks can see it, the version of 252 that we're discussing that has been, so you can see some of these changes that are occurring in it.
Yes, if you go down to E4,
E4, let's see.
feel like you're playing bingo. Just keep going down.
Okay.
It's 5E4 maybe. Let me scroll up a little bit.
This should be E4 here.
Did you find it?
The dynamics of a use and force encounter can quickly change.
That's 2526E4.
Okay.
Which page is that on? That might be easier for us.
Yeah, I gotta find it again. Let's see.
Here's 2526, use of force procedures.
There we go. There's E4. There we go. Perfect.
All right, I'll read yours. Mine's kind of messy looking. So when force was used on an individual and the individual requires medical care, sworn personnel shall ensure the individual receives medical care without delay. The officer responsible for interviewing the individual shall go to the location of the individual for purposes of conducting an interview. Now, this was brought about because officers were basically delaying. Now, they weren't delaying like serious medical issues. I mean, you can't, they'll just take them. But they would delay any sort of transport or anything like that. So IAFD, my unit, could get there and begin our investigation. And appropriately, it was discovered, I want to say through the Force Review Board, that that's just not good policy. So appropriately, they put it in here that we need to get them to the hospital or whatever they need, and then our detectives can follow them wherever they're going. So you'll see policies like that we're learning over time after applying these, where we just get better at it. We're writing better policy. So that's one that I like. Does anybody have any questions on 252? I know I kind of breezed through that. I apologize. I want to make sure all your questions are answered. So
just to be clear, where we see underlined things, that's an addition or a change.
Yeah.
Strike throughs are removed or moved around.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So hopefully folks have had a chance to look through these a little bit, and it's an incredible amount. I mean, we've got 4 separate policies here, but I think it helps to point out that, yeah, if there are changes, they're going to be underlined and appearing in purple ink. So if folks have questions after this, they can let us know, and we'll be happy to seek out answers to any questions that do come up.
Yeah, and some of those are just movement, some are additions. So I try to go through and tell you what I recognize as being new to the policy.
Okay.
That's why I just kind of breeze through it. I'm just trying to cover what changes we have, because a lot of this is just cleaning up the policy.
Okay. Should we move on
to go to 253 if nobody has any answers or questions? Sorry.
That sounds good. So here's 253 on the screen. And we see the rescinding of a number of special orders. Are those now incorporated into the actual policy itself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Okay, so if we start off with 2533A, you'll see where we're explaining some of our definitions here, like complaint of pain, an individual's claim or expression of temporary pain that is not reasonably associated with an injury. Things like that are really important to our policy because depending on what they're complaining about, whether it's an injury or whether it's just pain, can affect the level of investigation that we do. And a lot of it, I mean, the investigations are thorough from our unit, whether it be a level 2 or a level 3, they're thorough investigations, but it's important for our classification system. So that's why these definitions are real important. Deadly force, pretty self-explanatory. I don't see a lot that's changed there. Just cleaning it up. This is in C, deadly force. I know there's some issue with using a motor vehicle, number 10, using a motor vehicle to ram or intentionally collide with a fleeing motor vehicle with considerable force, consistent with SOP pursuit intervention technique. It's not considered deadly force for us to hit a vehicle unless it's over 35 miles an hour. So there's some issues with the verbiage there that we're still addressing. We're kind of tweaking it as we move along. And you can see just below it where it covers what I just said. Deficient review, a supervisory finding that's not based on a preponderance of the evidence, finding the application of force or fails to identify and resolve material discrepancies. That's important for our investigations. So when someone says that we have a deficient investigation, we want to understand what that means. It could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but if it's written down, then we know where to go with it. Then it talks about de-escalation, defines it.
Yeah, and these are simply the definitions for what appears later on in the policy.
Yes.
Okay, so these look fairly superficial, and that's because they are intended to be, because this is giving us the understanding of what these terms mean. So when they appear later on in the policy, we have an agreed upon definition, and there's no question anymore about what these terms mean, or no interpretation necessary. It's clearly spelled out in the policy itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
so if you all want to just kind of brace through that, if you have any questions about our definitions, I'm glad to answer any questions you might have about this policy.
Okay.
It's pretty cut and dry, though. It's just definitions.
Yeah. So can you go ahead and scroll down, Kelly?
Eric,
Yes.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
question.
Mhm.
On the bottom of page 6, which is 2A7, it says use of rain strike on an individual's extremities. And I figured out what it meant based on what's being struck from the definition, but that's going to stand alone. And with rain strike in caps, it sounds like it's some German guy's special way to maneuver and not what it really is, being hit with a strap. So I would suggest that either that be defined a little better or included in a more general statement. And I also noticed that most of the things relative to horses have been removed, including horse maneuvers. So I'm not sure if we're still using horses. That's my question.
Okay, so the rein strike would be using the reins of the horse, I take it. But yeah, I see what you mean, where it's in caps or it's capitalized like that. It does look like it's the proper name of a technique. So that I see what you mean.
Yeah, and it took me a minute when I saw that too. I've never worked for the mounted patrol, so yeah, it's a strange. It's strange. We can certainly look at that. I went ahead and put a link in the chat where you all can make policy recommendations or suggestions to the policy.
Okay, it doesn't look like that that has gone through. It may have gone to an individual instead of the group.
Okay. Oh yeah, it went to Kelly.
Okay.
Sorry.
Kelly gets everything.
I'll tell you. Yeah, people.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So, okay. All right, so let's, that looks like we've covered 53, which is all definitions. And okay, so we move on to 54
Okay.
and intermediate weapon systems. Okay.
Okay, a lot of the beginning of this is like the other policies. It's just us cleaning it up or better defining the headers, things like that. You'll see things that have all, been in policy for a long time, like the use of intermediate weapon systems shall be the minimum amount of force that is reasonable and necessary and permitted under department policy. That is permeated throughout our policy. It's really redundant. I personally would like to see a lot of the redundancy go away to make the policies more readable and clean. I had very little input in this policy as I took over about a month ago. So it's kind of mid-step into the policy, and now it's my policy. But so you may see more of my involvement limiting a lot of that redundancy and repetitive nature of our policy when the next one comes out.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to come in as a new editor to edit what has already been edited once.
Oh, the sheer volume of it too.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and you have to keep it moving. We're required to review our policy yearly, so.
Yep.
A lot of this, I don't see anything new towards the beginning. If I see something new, I'll shout it out here. I'm scrolling down 2544 right now. We clean up the announcements. Basically, we wanted to give people differentiate between warning and announcement. So when an officer says stop or I'm going to tase you, or stop or I'm going to beanbag you, that's a warning. And our announcement before we utilize the taser is taser, taser, taser. And that's to prevent sympathetic response from other officers, so they know what weapon system you might be deploying and they don't have some sort of reaction to what you're doing.
Yeah, you don't want someone hearing the pop of the taser cartridge and mistaking that for using lethal force or something like that. So
Correct.
Good. I guess I'd never thought about that before, the difference between the warning and the announcement, and the reason for having both of those. So thank you for bringing that up.
Sure thing. Let's see, the susceptible individuals, that's been in our policy for quite some time. There's a policy that I intend on removing here, so I'll point it out to you in the spirit of transparency. So on 6, it says an officer shall not conduct a show of force with a firearm or intermediate weapon system on an individual who is only passively resisting. It sounds really, I didn't write that policy, and it sounds really nice on face value, but that's bad policy. And the reason it is because if I just threatened 100 people with a gun and I'm walking down the street holding the gun to my side, and officers are telling me to stop, and I just keep walking, that's passive resistance. Or if I'm just standing there holding my gun, that's passive resistance. Officers should be able to use a show of force against that person to gain compliance, either with a less lethal or a lethal weapon, depending on the situation. So I intend on removing that, so
Okay.
you all know.
Can you move up a little bit, Kelly? I think it's on the previous page. Up a little bit more. There it is. Yeah, so 6, number on page 3 there, number 6. That's what you're saying. So, yeah.
So like I said, on face value, it looks real nice, especially if you're not familiar with force and how things sometimes go down. But taking that away, I think it could be disastrous.
Yeah.
It takes a whole level out, between actually using force. So you go from verbal commands to using force, and that show of force is pretty important.
Yeah, and it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't address the situations where this is necessary based on on the actions of the person, or what else is going on at that point.
Yes, and our policy already says that everything we do is going to be reasonable and necessary.
Yeah.
And minimum. So, I mean, it's covered in our policy.
Good.
Scrolling down again, a lot of this was just moved around. The OC spray, they basically created different sections for each weapon system. So you'll see a lot of red, but it's just moving stuff around. There's not a lot of new policy or new verbiage in there. Just little things like shall attempt to minimize exposure to others rather than attempting. Just better language. I didn't see anything new on the OC spray.
Okay.
We've always been tasked with monitoring individuals for respiratory or breathing problems, change in mental status. That's newer, meaning loss of consciousness, confusion, difficulty speaking. There's some issues with seizures, things like that, that we've been trying to address. Electronic control weapon, they describe the weapon system and the modes of it. It can be a little confusing if you don't understand it. So the description of the modes is just that. It's a description of what that weapon system can do. And then it goes down on what we are actually allowed to do and what our weapon system does. So you may see drive stun in there where we're not allowed to use solely a drive stun. A drive stun to us is to complete a circuit from already deploying our darts for better contact. If it's not having the effect we like, then we can put the taser against their skin, and sometimes that'll get a 3-point contact or give you a better contact for full effect. Our ECWs that we carry, the tasers, they do not go beyond 5 seconds. If you hold the trigger, they don't go beyond 5 seconds. They cycle off. You would have to re-pull the trigger. And with these, they hold 2 cartridges. So if you pull the trigger again, it's going to deploy more darts.
Okay.
A lot of this about the falls and stuff, that's been in our policy for a while now.
Yeah, and I think we saw, was it a sheriff's department taser deployment that ended up with a serious head injury, I think, from the person falling
Mhm.
after the ECW was applied. So,
Well, you lose all your muscular control, really. It locks you up. So you can't catch yourself when you fall.
so yeah, it looks again like most of this is simply editing and clearing up verbiage
Mhm.
more than adding.
Yeah, and I'm glad to answer any questions that you have on it.
Okay. I don't see anything coming up so far in the chat. So I imagine folks are probably looking through this and trying to understand the differences and what's changing. And it's a lot to take in.
It is. It's there's people that do this full time that have difficulty understanding a lot of, what we do and why we do it. And we're still working on, finding compliance. It's a complex thing. So it's understandable if you don't get it right away.
Oh yeah.
But you do have the link if you have any suggestions or you see errors or anything like that.
Good.
And we do go through all those, by the way.
Excellent. Okay. Should we go on to, I don't see anything else in 254. Should we go on to the last 255 and take a look through that?
Certainly, everyone's favorite, de-escalation. So it's our policy that we use de-escalation when feasible. And what that means is, I usually tell people the quick smell test of it is, does it look like the officers are trying to avoid using force against someone? Now, there's times where that's not appropriate. There's plenty of times in my career where I've drove up and someone was actively being hurt by someone else. That's not the time for me to try to engage in dialogue. But there's also plenty of opportunity in our career to engage in dialogue in a professional manner. And that's what we're trying to achieve with this policy. We want officers treating people with respect, speaking to them in a conversational tone, not closing distance on them unless it's necessary. So we aren't escalating situations, we're de-escalating them, where people can start calming down. So really, that's what this policy does. It explains what de-escalation is, the purpose for it, and why we do it. And basically, the end result is we want voluntary compliance if we can get it. We don't want to use force. We'd rather someone just comply, and we can do what we need to do from that point.
One of the things that's come up in some of the stand your ground laws in other states is the duty to retreat from confrontation and things like that. Is there such a thing for officers to try to back away from imminent aggressive acts, or I'm not sure how to phrase that best to kind of get the idea across.
I know where you're going with this, and see if this answers your question. We don't necessarily have a duty to retreat. Most of our policy requires that we act, but de-escalation in and of itself tells us that's a good thing, to back up. If someone's being overly aggressive, there's nothing wrong with officers backing up and giving them some space. Where it becomes a problem, and where I've seen other agencies go a little bit beyond, and I would hate to see it here, is where you back off to the point to where innocent civilians get injured, sometimes mortally, because they're afraid to act. You put so much pressure on an officer requiring so many things. And, you know, we want you to de-escalate or make sure that they're going to do something violent. Well, you back off to a point and they really hurt someone bad. Then they come in, and well, it's kind of too late at that point, in my opinion. So I would hate to see it go that far, but there is times where it's completely appropriate. You know, if you're engaged with someone and there's nobody else around, there's nothing wrong with backing up a little bit, giving them some space, talking to them in a calm manner, in a professional tone, and trying to gain their compliance voluntarily, while calling in additional resources. Trying to assess what you need. And that's really what we would like our officers to do is when they can, just back off, try to, you know, get some space there and call in the resources, get the things that you need there so you can bring that to a safe resolution.
Yeah, I think creating space is kind of what I was going for. So yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Not necessarily the duty to retreat, but that need to or the ability to back off and create some space to again de-escalate a situation.
Yes, sir.
And Eric,
Good.
one thing, if I could add to that, Rich, is that we do have, and a lot of times people don't know that we actually have a disengagement policy. That kind of goes with it. Basically, the disengagement policy, what is we look at the situation. If it's a situation where there are no charges and then there may be at times, but what it allows the officers to do is say, you know what is the interest of the state and the department to take this individual in the custody versus the risk of the officer getting injured or injuring that individual. A lot of that happens with instances where somebody may want to commit suicide and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to commit suicide and I'm going to get you to shoot me. And after trying to de-escalate it or trying to talk them into, you know, into going for help, once that doesn't work, there is a policy that allows the officers to just disengage in order to not increase the risk. Sorry, Rich.
Oh, no, that's a great point. You know, it's been a few months since I worked for you, sir. So I appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, and it gives us a sense of the breadth of policies that APD has to have in place, trying to account for all of these situations that may come up, you know, once in an officer's career, but we have to have a policy to direct how the officers will respond to it. So
Yes.
go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I just want to add, you know, when you're an officer on a call, it can go from 0 to 100 in a tenth of a second. So, you know, it's always easy to hindsight guess what the officer should have did, could have did, and all that. And I get concerned that we're putting the handcuffs on the wrong people sometimes by making our officers lay back too much. You know, you hear of cases where officers were on a call earlier and they left the guy go, they disengaged, and 6 hours later, he was beating the heck out of his spouse or his girlfriend or his buddy and things of that nature. So for everybody that's listening into this, I encourage you to go through the Albuquerque Police Department Citizens Academy, get educated to the other side of it. Don't listen to just the news media. And I try to maintain as neutral as I can, but I'm going to tell you, they have a reality-based training center down there that is phenomenal. And I think I say this at quite a few meetings. And if you want to learn how quick things can change, they bring in professional actors and they have no idea what the actor is going to do. And in less than a tenth of a second, the actor has a rubber knife on you, or is charging at you down a dark hallway or a simulated dark alley. But I understand we need to have policies for use of force, but I always worry about how much are we restricting our people that we are asking to enforce laws and maintain peace in our neighborhoods.
It seems you're looking at the policies. I think that the basic idea that APD has put into these policies is that de-escalate and deactivate the situation as much as possible. But it still leaves that the response there and the recognition that there are some instances where force is going to be necessary. It's going to be an absolute part of doing the job, and the difficulty for officers is to maintain that understanding of the difference and to use their de-escalation when they can and as much as they can, without, as you said, handcuffing the officer to the point of and as Commander Evans mentioned, not putting other people in jeopardy as well. So it's difficult. Tom, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Mr. Evans, is there a national guideline that you are following to try to write this use of force policy?
Department of Justice, sir. Yeah,
Okay, I mean,
we've
we've been at this use of force policy from day one of the DOJ getting here. They wanted to see a better use of force policy. And so far we haven't come up with one. And that's been years. So I was wondering if, can we plagiarism somebody else's that has a working, acceptable use of force policy and just put our name on it? And that we don't have to rewrite the rules every 6 months? Can we do that?
Okay, so a lot of that does go on. To answer your question, we do research other agencies and we do look at lessons learned and successes from other departments that have been under consent decree. Second part of the question, I think we have a good policy. Sure, there's, with any policy, you have to look at it like a living document. Especially with law enforcement and the changes in trends and in our communities, how our communities change, our policies change almost as frequently as our communities do. So as you see these changes around you in your community, our policies should be changing along with that. And it should never be stagnant and just a cut and paste sort of thing. So our policy for Albuquerque, New Mexico is going to be a lot different than, say, Chicago, Illinois, even though they may have a great policy for Chicago. We have a good policy for Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, it's not perfect, certainly. No policy is. It's a lot of rules, right? And sometimes they have unintended consequences. But we absolutely do our best, and we put a lot of thought into it, not only with experts in their field, but attorneys. It does go through the Department of Justice. It does go through our monitors, and it goes through the public forum. So, and it goes through our officers as well, where they have input. So yes and no. Yeah, we do plagiarize a bit when it's appropriate, but oftentimes we have to be careful about that because all our communities are so different from one another.
So when does this policy that you're creating now go before the DOJ?
It depends. Right now, it's going to be going through a review policy where it's sent out to the officers and they can comment on it. And then we go through those comments, each one, and that could be 500-600 comments, depending on how many. This policy is highly scrutinized. So it depends on how long that takes to fix any potential issues. And then we send it up to the policy review board, and then it goes up to the DOJ and the independent monitors.
Okay, so we're talking a year?
Hey, yes, it takes over a year to get a policy enacted, which in my opinion is too late. I discussed this at my last presentation that I think we have to be careful about bureaucracy slowing us down, because policy should be cutting edge. It should always be what you need at the time you need it, not what you needed a year ago. So, I would hope to get that process moving, but as you know, government can be kind of slow at times.
Yeah, let me just point out.
Okay,
real quickly.
I'm sorry, I was a little late. Um,
You're
where
cutting
are you
out.
from, Mr. Evans? Are you new to this?
I've been doing police work a while. Hence the gray hair.
He looks great for 29, doesn't he?
I meant the policies. Yeah.
Policies, I've been doing different policies over the years, but this is my first time doing the force policies or being the owner of the force policy, yes.
Yeah, let me just point out, this is,
I wish you luck.
Thank you, sir.
we do have the policies that are 252 to 255 do exist already. So what we're seeing here is changes and editing of the existing policies. So we do have these in place. The cadets are being trained on these policies. And what we're seeing are changes and revisions to an existing policy. So it's not as if these are coming out of nowhere. These are changes to the existing policy to clean it up and to move stuff around so it makes more sense. And then additions and changes that have become apparently necessary through the enactment of the previous iteration of the policy. So changes, and I think we can see some of the changes that have gone into this policy directly reflect issues that have come up in other cities with the need to request immediate attention for individuals and monitoring individuals. Those things are being stressed because we've seen in other places what's happened when those things haven't been stressed enough in the policy, haven't been clear enough in the policy. So as Commander Evans said, this is a living document subject to change as necessary. But it does seem like the time it takes, there are so many steps built in, and I sent the flow chart for everyone to have a look at of what steps these policies have to go through before they're enacted. And it's quite the flow chart. So it's going to take time for all of that to work through. And it's an unfortunate part of running a large police department is there's going to be that time. But as we see in some of these changes, there are special orders that have been rescinded. And those special orders can provide kind of that intermediate step between what the policy says now and what it needs to say in the future. So there are other means of adjusting these things as we go along. But we look at the SOP, and use of force is perhaps the most difficult of all APD policies because of the serious consequences that it has for not only people in the community, but also the officers themselves. So yeah, this is a tough one. And the DOJ has provides a tremendous amount of input and guidance on what they see in these policies, what they think needs to change in it. And so the department is never without their oversight on these things and their input on these, even before it gets to the DOJ review of the policy. All right, let's see. David Walker asked, is the DOJ giving input to the policy changes? And yes, the answer to that is absolutely. The DOJ has provided a lot of guidance on this. And one of the stumbling blocks continues to be the investigation of use of force more than the use of force policy itself. And that's being addressed through DOJ guidance and the new EFIT, the external force investigation team, and changes to the force review board and things like that. So it looks like we're seeing tremendous amount of changes to the use of force policies here, but most of it is fairly cosmetic and just rearranging what's already there and seems to be working quite well. All right. Are there any other questions? Anybody else on the council have any questions or issues you'd like to raise?
Eric, there's another question there. There are the policies presented to the academy as well. I believe
Oh,
all
yes.
current policies are taught to the academy.
Yes, so the cadets are being trained on the existing policy, and as policies change, they're brought into the curriculum at the academy, and then all of the officers already on the street are retrained in those changing policies as they come about through their ongoing training efforts. So yeah, the officers are trained with the most current set of policies out there. Okay. I think that's about everything we have so far. I don't see anything else coming up in the chat. So thank you, Commander Evans, for your presentation, and thank you for sharing that link with us on the issues we have. If folks have issues or comments, we now have a place where folks can submit those. So hopefully everyone will take some more time to look through each of these policies, and if there's anything that folks think needs to be changed, they can let us on the council know, or they can make the recommendations directly to the link you suggested. So, all right. Well, thank you, Commander. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
My
And,
pleasure. You all have a good night now.
You too. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Commander Sanchez, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. We did have a question come up, and I meant to ask about this earlier as well, about the shot spotter testing that was going on.
Yes.
Was that done in the Northwest?
No, not yet. They just did Foothills Area Command and Northeast Area Command. We're hoping that it's going to get to our area command here soon. But once we do have ShotSpotter and they are going to test it, usually it happens early in the morning. I think Northeast and Foothills had theirs about 2 in the morning. But yes, we're hoping that it's going to be soon. Once that happens, I think what we'll try to get information out, and I'll get with the Northeast, see if how much of an issue they had regarding calls or anything because of that testing. My understanding is that there wasn't a lot of calls necessarily. Just because of the way that the company does the testing, it didn't seem like it affected a lot of the residents there, but I will make sure, I'll look into it just to make sure.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right. Looks like I killed my agenda amongst everything else here. So let me pull that back up. Okay. All right. So I don't think we have any old business to bring up before the council and the community. We do have a couple of items of new business. The Northwest CPC is putting out a recommendation based on a number of comments we've received and requests to see about APD perhaps implementing, we're calling it intersection traffic enforcement. Many people have expressed issues with, we know we have terrible issues of red light runners throughout the city, and we have some really dangerous intersections here in the Northwest. So we will be putting a recommendation out that APD focus some resources on those most dangerous intersections and carry out some live enforcement of red lights and things of that sort. We do see the traffic unit do speed enforcement. We'd like to see them perhaps also do this intersection enforcement. So we will be putting that recommendation out shortly. Our other new business, we have National Night Out coming soon. That's coming up on Tuesday, August 3rd. It's the first Tuesday in August every year. And I believe I sent out the link. If I haven't, I will. But once again, if your neighborhood group or your neighborhood watch is putting on activities, APD has a link where you can register your event. and they will do their best to get an officer or supervisor to come out and meet with your community group during that event, just as a chance for you to get to know some of your local officers, and for the officers to get to know the folks in their community in a less formal setting than perhaps some of us meet them, without the flashing lights and the radar guns behind you. And so if I didn't send that out, I will. And if you have questions about National Night Out, Pete Gelibert is our area command contact for that. And his information is in the chat already. You can call him at the Northwest Substation, or you can email him. The National Night Out, a great opportunity to spend some time with folks in your area and get to know each other a little better, and help us to build more community that way. We have our next CPC meeting is coming up on August 18th. And our invitation has gone out to the traffic/motors unit to present at that occasion. Haven't heard back from them yet, but we hope to have them come out and join us and tell us about what they do and some of the issues around serious crash investigations and things like that, as well as what they do in the way of enforcement of traffic laws, et cetera. So we look forward to having them August 18th. We are still looking forward to resuming in-person meetings. We have a limited number of community areas available to us here in the Northwest. We have the Taylor Ranch Library doesn't have any meeting rooms, so that's not available to us. The community center is about the only thing we have, so we will be looking forward to returning to the Don Newton Taylor Ranch Community Center once they are open again for public meetings. I understand there's been some delay on that. They hope to open in August. I imagine they're having the same issues as everyone else, trying to get up to a full complement of staff again to run all of their programs. So we will plan the August meeting is likely to be via Zoom again. And we are hoping to transition to a hybrid meeting where folks can join us via Zoom or in person as their ability and needs allow. Any questions on those issues or any comments from the council? All right. Is there anything else? I saw in the chat, we did have a question about how the shot spotter technology works. I think that would be a good opportunity for another conversation at one of the council meetings. Commander Sanchez, do you want to give a brief update or a brief explanation of ShotSpotter?
Sure. So ShotSpotter, the way that the system does it, basically it looks at, it does help us a lot with data, but more importantly, it gets us the information when it picks up a shot that's being fired within that radius. It right away, it sends a notification to communications and to the officer's cell phone. So what that does, that in turn allows officers to respond at a much faster rate than somebody calling it in and going through that process. Now, we still encourage people to call in, of course, even if there's one in that radius or within your neighborhood. But the idea is that we want to have that response. And I will say that we have seen a lot of success in it. In fact, there has been at least one homicide that I know about that they actually, because of that, they were able to, the officers responding right away, they actually found the individual walking. And so it does help. What I can do is if you all want to determine when, I can schedule somebody from the RTCC to come in, Commander Nervitsky, to come in, not only to talk about ShotSpotter, to talk about the RTCC and some of the systems that they have there, how they provide information to the officers that are responding to calls. So I can do, I can talk to him, but just let me know when you all want to schedule and I can have him. And he'll have a lot more detail into it. I assisted with the policy. In fact, I kind of helped write the policy for ShotSpotter, but he knows all the technology part of it. I just know the response part.
Excellent. Yeah, that would be definitely something for us to look forward to. The real-time crime center is a fascinating piece of APD technology and part of the system. And yeah, we'll definitely see about getting someone scheduled for that. I think the community would really enjoy that presentation. So thank you for that. All right. If there's nothing else coming, oh, Jeff, go ahead.
The commander's back on. I'd like for him to address that question that a person had earlier. I know I could say it just off the cuff where they had, has APD ever thought of having a third level of officer between PSA and regular that would do this, speeding tickets and other lower level problems? I can say this from the voice of doing ride-alongs. Traffic stops aren't always just low level. But Commander Sanchez, if you would, sir, make a comment to that.
Yeah, well, it would have to definitely be a sworn officer for traffic stops. It has to be. We can't have, because state statute requires certain things for us to be able to detain somebody, and we have to make sure that, that we don't violate anybody's rights. And by state statute, if you have somebody stopping somebody that, that's not a sworn officer, then you run into issues. So it does have to be not only for the statute requirement, but also safety. For safety, the last thing we need is a civilian or somebody even that may have certain equipment on them, but is not a sworn officer, stopping somebody, because then it's a huge liability. Although we have CSSs and PSAs that carry some type, whether it's pepper spray or something like that, it's always important that everybody understands that for them, it is a tool to defend themselves. Whereas for law enforcement, a lot of the tools that we use, yes, it is to defend ourselves also, but it's used as an offensive tool necessarily. I hate using that word, but it is, because an officer has, by law, and has a duty to detain and arrest somebody and or stop a threat or things like that. And so if you have somebody that's not sworn, you're going to run into issues. I don't see that necessarily happen, because it would violate state statute.
Perhaps a solution that would be going back to something like the reserve officers that we used to have, where you have, or perhaps some other level of sworn officer, like a part-time officer positions or something like that, where we could enhance the number of officers. But it would be very difficult to do with you'd still, again, as you said, you're still having to put a sworn officer into that situation. So,
and even with reserve officers, we would not be able to do that. So state statute requires that a reserve officer, obviously, they have to keep all their certifications. However, they are required to, they can't do anything by themselves. They have to be with a sworn, full paid, active officer by state statute. So we couldn't have a reserve officer out doing traffic stops on their own.
Okay, so we'd actually just increase the danger to the officer and the reserve officer, because we're having to double them up. So we wouldn't gain anything from it.
No, we would not.
And William brought up the issue of something like the speed vans. But I guess this explains why we see the difference in why a speed van would be allowed, because we're not actually detaining anyone when they're issued the civil citation from a speed van.
Yeah, and those tickets, the other thing with those tickets is, unless I'm saying, but my understanding, it's what they considered a civil ticket.
Yeah.
And so there's different rules, because it is just a civil citation. It doesn't, there still has to be, they can be contested, and there still has to be some burden of proof, but it's not the same burden of proof required for somebody that is given a traffic citation by a law enforcement officer.
Okay. Yeah. So That makes good sense. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. So hopefully the speed vans are something that the city is contemplating, and hopefully we'll have more information on that in the near future. But as the commander said, the citations that are issued by speed vans, like they have up in Rio Rancho, for instance, are civil complaints. They're not criminal complaints. They aren't counted against your driving license, or they're not reported to your insurance company or anything like that. So they're much more of a nuisance ticket type of arrangement. So very different from a traffic stop and a moving citation issued by a police officer in person, which is one reason we'd like to see if we can get the traffic unit to do some intersection enforcement, so we can get some more caution into folks before they run red lights as frequently as they do here. All right. Is there anything else anybody would like to raise? Please put it into the chat. Hopefully we've addressed William's question sufficiently. And I don't see anything else.
Eric, I think that's a fantastic idea to get the Real-Time Crime Center to come in and give a presentation, you know, at one of our future meetings. I'm not saying the August one, but and what would be great is if that could be an in-person meeting, because I believe that would have more effectivity.
Yeah, hopefully, if we can get back to meeting in September, perhaps we can set that up for our September meeting. I think that would be a really beneficial. It's the RTCC it's fascinating to me, and they do a wonderful job. I'd love for everyone to get a better understanding of just what they do beyond ShotSpotter, but including that.
And the other thing that I would offer, and I can speak to Commander Nerbitsky also, but a lot of times when we hear about these things that the department has, but I think especially for board members, for the CPCs, I think sometimes it is important to have more of a visual hands-on. If anybody has, is interested and you say, you know what, I really want to, I want to see it close in person at the RTCC. Obviously it wouldn't be during the CPC or anything, but if anybody wants that, send me an email, and then I can get with Commander Nerbetsky, and even I can, if there's a time that you want to go look at it, we can set something up so that you can get that hands-on. To me, I think that's something important too, because a lot of times we talk about things that we have, and we try to visualize it, right? But there's nothing like actually seeing how something works in person. So that's something that I can offer the board members, and there may be a few times, different times that we may be able to do it, but send me an email, and I've done that in the past, and Commander Nerbetsky is really good about accommodating that, because he is very proud, and he should be, about the job that they're doing out there.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that would be wonderful if we can make arrangements for a field trip, as it were, to see the RTCC in person. I think you're right. It's one thing to hear about it and to see the pictures, but to actually experience it and have the ability to interact and ask questions, we just can't overstate the importance of that. So yeah, we'll look forward to trying to get something like that set up, and I'll be happy to work with the council, and we'll get in touch with you, Commander, and see what we can do there. That'd be wonderful.
Sounds good.
All right. All right. I think that's everything we have for this evening. I'd like to once again thank everybody for joining us. A special thanks out to Commander Evans for joining us and providing an update on the policy. And thank you to Lieutenant Saladin and Officer English for joining us. And as always, thank you, Commander, for your presence and your willingness to answer our questions. So thank you to everyone. We look forward to seeing you again via Zoom on August 18th. And we will let you know as soon as we have a confirmation on our speaker, so everybody can get the word out on that and get as many folks in here as we can. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Stay dry. It looks like we've got some more bad weather coming in. Stay cool and look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye-bye.